Hey guys, Drew Brashler at DBB Audio. I have some exciting news. I've teamed up with Waves, and they've sent me out the Waves SoundGrid card for the X32, so I can teach you guys how to get this thing installed, how to actually use it on the X32, and how to implement some plugins in your workflow for your board with the X32. Now, the exciting thing is Waves actually has an Impact Server combo, so not only does it include the Waves X-WSG card that goes into the X32, but then they also send you out the required Cat6 cables, a router, and an Impact Server, which actually runs all of the plugins for you for all the DSP that it does. So let's go ahead and jump in, get this thing installed in the X32. So to install the X-WSG card, simply just remove it from the box. Once you have it out of the box, we're going to go ahead and turn off our console, remove the old expansion card, and install the new expansion card from Waves. So go ahead and turn off your console and unplug your power. And then you'll just need a simple screwdriver, either a Phillips 0 or a Phillips 2 screwdriver. And we're going to remove these two screws on the sides of the expansion card. There's 3 screws along the bottom. Don't actually remove those. Those hold the actual PCB board to this metal plate. So it's just the side 2 screws. So we're going to just go ahead and remove those. And we will reuse the old screws, so make sure to not discard those. Once you have the screws out, we will simply just grab these 2 little handles and pull out. And so here's the Behringer X USB card. So we're going to go ahead and just take this and set it aside. And then take our new Waves expansion card and install it. Now, when we're installing this, you'll notice that there's a little slot here, and there's also a similar slot on the other side. You'll want to go ahead and line up this part of the PCB board with those slots and simply slide it in. And then grab your 2 screws and just replace those. Once you've done that, go ahead and apply power back to your console. Grab the Cat6 cable that was supplied by Waves, plug it into the card, and now we're going to plug this into our computer and get it registered and working. Okay, so now once you're at your computer with the Cat6 line plugged in there, we're going to go ahead and open up Waves Central, log into your account, and then click Easy Install and Activate. Once you're here, we're going to scroll down through all of your stuff and select the X-WSG driver, and we're going to install and activate. And then we're going to go ahead and confirm. And then this will take a few seconds. So once the installation is done, it's going to ask you to restart your computer. So you can go ahead and press OK, go ahead and close out of Waves Central and restart your computer. Okay, so now that once your computer is restarted, go ahead and open up SoundGrid Studio, and we're going to go ahead and press Next here. It's going to go ahead and scan the network ports and devices to see what is installed and what is configured. Now remember, we have the X-WSG card connected directly to my MacBook. And so it's going to give us options here of whether we want to connect to a wireless network, which it's not connected to, or right here, which is the wired one. So we're going to go ahead and press Next. And while this is going, it's going to go ahead and update the firmware on this device. Now, while this is happening, you will notice on the back of the X-WSG card that there is going to be a yellow LED light. Okay, so we can now see here that it says SoundGrid Studio is configured and ready for use. Please restart your devices to finish the firmware update. So we're going to go ahead and on the X32 now we're going to reboot the device by just turning off and turning on the console. And so we can see that on our SoundGrid Studio here that we have green in the SG in the upper menu bar up here. And we can also see that we have our X-WSG card. It is on, and it's showing that it's running at 48 kilohertz. So now that we have our X-WSG installed, let's go ahead and install MultiRack. So we're going to go back to Waves Central. We're going to go easy install and activate after we've logged into our user account. Once we come here, we're going to go and find MultiRack. We're going to select and install and activate. So once that's finished, we can go ahead and close out of Waves Central. So the beautiful thing about the Waves Server Impact combo kit for the X32 is it not only includes the card, but it also includes a network switch that's compatible with SoundGrid, as well as the server and all the cables and power connections that you need to actually get it working. Now the main thing for interfacing the SoundGrid card to the server and our computer for the controlling is a network switch. Now there's a bunch of different devices that are compatible with the SoundGrid network. You can go on Waves website and check that out to double check to see if your device is listed in there. Now this one is a Netgear GS 10108, and this is the switch that the Waves combo kit includes. So this is going to be working with our SoundGrid system that we have set up here. Now with this, we have our different network ports right here, and basically, all we're going to do is connect our X-WSG card with the Cat6 cable directly into one of these ports. The second port will be connected into our computer for the actual control, and then the third port will be connected into our Impact server. Now here is the Impact server itself. It's actually pretty small. I'm impressed with how small it is. It could easily fit in a 2-high rack mount bracket, maybe with some tie-down straps, that sort of thing. There's a power button on the front, and then on the back, the two connections that we'll have to actually worry about is the power connections that's right here, and then one of the Ethernet jacks is open. The other one is closed. So the open connection is what will actually connect to our network switch for the DSP handling. So this actually does an impressive amount of DSP handling. So with the Waves server network, basically this does all the DSP routing and handling. And the amount of plugins that this can run is pretty impressive. And I'll post a little bit of more information on that on the blog post. But just to give you an idea, this can actually run 99 initiations of the C6 plugin. So you can run 99 C6s mono on this without actually getting to the point where you are overloading this or getting any pops or cracks, which is pretty impressive. And then you can run 410 of the API 2500 compressor. So it's pretty impressive what the Impact server can do. If you find that you don't have enough processing with this, you can always go to the Extreme, which has a lot more DSP handling than the Impact. Now the great thing about the SoundGrid setup is that you can interface multiple SoundGrid DSP servers and have redundancy, which is pretty cool. So you can actually stack two of these, connect them into the network switch, and if one happens to go down, the other one will still be processing the audio, and you won't have any large interruptions. So let's go ahead and actually get these things connected in. So we can see that we have our Netgear switch and our Waves server here. So we're just going to go ahead and start connecting this stuff up. So first thing's power, and make sure that that is on. You can see that we have power right here. Next thing is to apply power to the Waves server, and we are going to connect up our X-WSG card, as well as connect up our server. And then lastly, we need to connect our computer that's going to be controlling the Waves server. Now that we have the X-WSG card installed in the X32, and we have the Waves Impact Server going on the network and everything. Before we hop into the actual multi-rack program, I wanted to show you a little bit more of the routing side of things on the actual console here. And so what we have is our routing page. So when we hit the routing button, we have our home routing blocks. So this is where you're going to be pulling your audio inputs off the stage or off the back of the board, and this is the actual audio that gets through to the channels on the board itself. So if we were going to be using a stage box on stage, obviously we would want to be pulling that from the AES-50 inputs rather than the local. Now, with the X-WSG card, there's a couple different ways to configure this, and over the next several weeks, I'm going to be going over all those different variations that we can do. But the main setup that I want to show you guys today is how to get all 32 channels from our board on the back side of this, put them into the card, and then get from the card all the way back to the channels. That way we can process all 32 channels through MultiRack. So as we can see, we have our home routing here. Now, if we tab over, we also have card out. So let's go ahead and tab over here. And so this is what actually feeds our expansion card on the board. Now, we can see that all of them are set up to local. Now, this is good, unless you're using a stage box. So if you do have your X32 configured with stage boxes, you would want to be pulling your routing from those stage boxes as well. So be using AES-50A 1 through 32 if you were using the S32 Digital Snake. What I'm saying is here that you need to make sure that you're sending your local channels of XLR inputs into the card first. Okay, so we're going to be pulling obviously from the local on the back side of our board. So we're going to go ahead and select local 1 through 8, 9 through 16, 17 through 24, and 25 through 32. So what this means is that my X-WSG card is actually getting my audio from these inputs first. Now, the way that the board handles this is that it pulls those directly off the preamp before any of the channel processing, which can be a pro or a con depending on the way that you look at it. But now that we have our inputs routed to the card, and then it would be getting processed via our multi-rack program, let's go ahead and get the inputs back from multi-rack onto our channel faders. So now we're going to go back over to home. And this is where all of our inputs here need to change to card. So we can see local 1 through 8. We are actually going to take inputs 1 through 8 and pull it through card 1 through 8. And then 9 through 16 is going to be card 9 through 16, 17 through 24, down to card, and same thing with the last one. So now what this is doing is our inputs from the back of the board are going to the expansion card. The expansion card is then going to multi-rack, getting processed on the audio, it's getting sent back to the expansion card, and then we are pulling the channels from the expansion card to our actual faders on the board. Now, when you plug something into channel 1 and you're wanting to adjust the gain, you do need to go into a different spot on the board to be able to adjust that up and down. And that's actually in our setup button, and then over to preamps. Now, what this lets us do is we can go and view all of the different preamp blocks that are available to us. We can see the connected devices. If we have any AES-50 snakes connected, we'd be able to see those. But what I can do is I can go and turn on or off phantom power, as well as adjust the gain up or down. And that way you can be looking at the SoundGrid program and be able to adjust the gain up and down. Now, the channels over here on the preamp side, you do have trim, but it's digital trim. So you have anywhere from -18 all the way up to positive 18 of trim that you can adjust on the board. Now, this is going to be separate from your preamp. So if you are setting up your board for the first time and you already have installed multi-rack and are using it, you'll want to make sure that you go to the setup and preamps for the routing. Now, let's go ahead and dive into the program. Okay, so now that we have the Waves server networked and everything, we're going to go to our multi-rack SoundGrid program. Once you have that open, make sure that this button right here, you can double click to change this. This needs to be in setup. because if you're in show, you're not going to be able to configure any system changes. Basically, the difference between setup and show is that show makes it so that you can't do any changes that will temporarily interrupt audio, whereas if it's in setup menu, it would interrupt audio if you changed any of the settings. So once we have that done there, we're going to go ahead and go to audio and SoundGrid inventory. So this is going to show us what devices we have connected to the network, and it's going to allow us to assign them. So we're going to go ahead and click on our WSG, and we're going to assign that to 1. And our SG driver here, we're going to assign to 2. So we can see that we have an X-WSG, and we can see that the sync is okay. And that is the card that is actually attached into the console. We can go ahead and press the settings button, and this will bring up a settings tab of that card. We can also see that we have our SD driver here, which is the SoundGrid driver on my Mac. And then we also have the MultiRack, which is another thing here. So here's the preferences for the X-WSG card. We can see that we are at 48 kilohertz on the board. We can see a little bit more information here and on the About page. So I'm going to go ahead and close that. Lastly, we're going to assign our SoundGrid server. So this is the Impact Server. We're going to go ahead and click 1 here. And we can also see that we can update the firmware. I'm not going to do that right at this second. But now we have our WSG, our driver, MultiRack, and our server all connected here. And so we're just going to go ahead and close this. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to open up audio and go to SoundGrid Connections. Once we're here, we're going to double-click to add a connection. So we're going to double-click and device name. So this is basically where we're going to be pulling our source and where the destination is. And so we're going to first route our inputs into MultiRack and then our outputs from MultiRack back. So the device that we're going to be pulling this from is the X-WSG. So we're going to be pulling it from there. And we are wanting it to go to MultiRack. Now we can see that we have output channel range, so 1 to 1. So this means that there is 1 channel. Now what we want to do is we want to run all 32 channels through MultiRack, or you can do 8 or 16. This is all up to you. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take this and we're going to click and drag all the way up. We can also type in 32. And so we can see that the input channel range on MultiRack is also 1 to 32. And so then we're going to double click to add another connection. And this is where we're going to select MultiRack. And then we're going to go 32 channels. And then we are going to be going to the X-WSG. And this is also going to be 32 channels. There we go. So we can see that our input is coming from the X-WSG going into MultiRack. And then MultiRack is then processing it, and then the output of MultiRack is then going back to the X-WSG. So it goes X32, and then this, and then MultiRack, out of MultiRack, to the card, and then back into the X32. Now, one last thing that we actually have to do on this page before we're good is to click this little box that says on. This is actually going to enable these connections to happen. So once that's done, we can go ahead and hit apply and then press OK. And then we will see some lights going on. We can see our system percentage is at 0. And so we can go ahead and add a rack. So we can go ahead and add 1 or 32 racks. Depends on how many channels you want. So I'm just going to go ahead and do 4 for right now. And we can see that I have some audio here. So I have a sine wave going on input 1, and then I have a little microphone here, check, check, check. And we can see that we have multiple channels here. Now, if we were wanting to change the routing, what's nice is when you add the racks, there's this auto route racks. So basically, it will just take up the next connection that's available. But you can go manually change these if you want to. So we can see that I have mono X-WSG, and then I can select 1 through 32 on here to change the routing. Now, if we change this into show mode, I won't be able to change the routing because obviously that would interrupt audio. Now that we have the X-WSG card installed and working with SoundGrid on our computer, that's it for the video for today. But make sure you subscribe to my channel or my blog, as over the next several weeks, I'm going to be releasing a lot more instructional videos on the X-WSG card, how to actually use it with the X32, and how to configure this into your weekly audio workflow. Now, I'm just super excited that Waves is now able to use some plugins with the X32, because every weekend when I'm mixing on the venue profile system from Avid, I'm able to use Waves plugins directly on the console. And there's some just amazing plugins that we can use in our audio workflow that will just make some very big improvements as far as the audio sound goes on a given weekend. So make sure to subscribe to my channel here. If not, head over to my blog, subscribe there. I do have some free goodies that you can download there when you subscribe to my email list. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching.